Okay, so straight out the gate, I just want to let you know I'm a little bit nervous. I was not expecting to really make this video ever, so I have not talked about this before, and I might stumble over my words, and let's just get on with it, shall we? I grew up in a fundamental Baptist church from ages 11 to 18. It was an independent, fundamental Baptist, KJV only church, and they also observed a lot of the principles of Bill Gothard, who started the Institute of Basic Life Principles. In the Institute of Basic Life Principles, there are 49 character qualities that all Christians should strive to live by. And there's a lot of extraneous stuff that isn't even in the Bible. There are some pretty whack ideas in Bill Gothard's organization. So the story of my departure from the Fundamental Baptist Church is riddled with doubts, a church split, my pastor calling me out from the pulpit. But really for this video, I want to talk about the main reasons that I'm never going back to any Fundamental Baptist church ever. Point one, Fundamental Baptists are focused on all the wrong things. This also applies to the Institute of Basic Life Principles, and that is a hyper focus on external details. The exact length of your hair, the exact length of your skirt, the amount of makeup you wear, whether you take grape juice or wine for the Lord's Supper. You're following all these really zany, random ideas. A Christian could argue that we need to live by a code of conduct, and I would not dispute that Christians, if they really are following what's in the Bible, they're going to have a code of conduct. Fundamentalism revolves around these external details rather than revolving around the heart of what Jesus taught. Loving God with all your heart, soul, mind, loving your neighbor as yourself, doing good to those who persecute you, clothing the naked, feeding the sick, relieving the oppressed. None of our actual founders' main teachings are focused on, which is absolutely mind-boggling. I remember my friend, who was my friend at the time, she called me out for having braided my hair. And I said, is that from the same verse that says you shouldn't be putting on apparel too? So should I just be going around naked? Or that's really the spirit that exists inside these organizations, is like extremely judgmental. Judgmental to the point where you're judging each other for things that are not, once again, even in the Bible, where it tries to be Christianity on steroids, but really it's the most vapid and shallow form of Christianity that there is. Take, for instance, the Duggar family, who is an ATI family, whether they have tried to consciously remove themselves from Bill Gothard. Josh Duggar was on the Family Research Council, and he was cheating on his wife. And I don't mean to single the Duggars out. Obviously, even Bill Gothard himself had his own scandal. There are so many fundamental men, especially, who get busted in these scandals. And it's really gross to say all this, so I kind of feel disgusting right now, but because fundamentalism is so focused on all this random stuff that doesn't matter, you shouldn't have your sleeves off your shoulders, you know, but none of the actual things that matter. When you're not really emphasizing what your own leader spoke of, then there's a problem with your faith. The other point that I want to make is that fundamentalism has no stake in Christian history. I'm going to kind of read off a paper here because I wrote this up. But fundamentalism emerged as a reactionary movement to modern Western culture during the 19th and 20th century in America and the UK. Its entire reason for existing is pretty much as a reaction against liberalism and modernism. You might have noticed that every fundie seems to make it their job to fight against the current culture, and that's just because that's the history of fundamentalism. There's a few problems with this. First of all, Jesus never gave his followers any kind of mandate to fight against the culture or to combat the culture. When the Pharisees and Sadducees asked him what to do with their money, he said, give to Caesar what's Caesar and give to God what is God's. The Jews believed that all of God's people should observe all the sacred days and they shouldn't eat meat. The Greeks believed otherwise, and Paul basically told them, if you don't want to eat the meat, then don't eat the meat. If you are okay with eating the meat, eat the meat. Fundamentalism never observes that at all. Everybody needs to follow the exact same rules and regulations, and it tries to strip our culture and fit everybody into a tiny box, and that's not That's not Christianity. Christianity was always intended to bring light and love and art and culture and goodness to every age. The third point is that fundamentalism is psychologically damaging. This is something that I really want to talk about because I think it's extremely important. I remember a specific incident when I was going to my church, and there was a woman that I was talking to at the time. I was talking to her online, and she was one of the few people that I talked to outside the church. She had bipolar disorder. She would kind of share some of her struggles with me, and I became very curious and interested in what she had to say because she was such a creative and vibrant woman. She wrote books, she did art, she traveled. She was just really eccentric and interesting to me. And of course, coming from where I was coming from, where everybody dressed a certain way, acted a certain way, talked a certain way, just this woman who was able to just be herself. She was so interesting to me. And I remember walking up to one of the men in my church, and we had gotten into a conversation, and I mentioned my bipolar friend, and he just looks at me and says, "Well, where's bipolar in the Bible?" He didn't believe that bipolar was even a thing. I just answered and said, "Well, where are headaches in the Bible? Because I get those." I'm terrible. This really dismissive approach to mental health is a hallmark of fundies in the Institute of Basic Life Principles, these 49 character qualities that we all had to live by. One of them was being joyful. We had to have a joyful countenance. We had to be smiling all the time. We had to be sweet and kind. And even if you were going through a hard time, if someone said, how are you? I'm blessed, I'm happy, I'm good. You're just suppressing all the actual emotions that are going on inside of you. I pulled up a little definition for suppression, and I think it's really important. A conscious effort to hide or pretend that an individual's feelings, thoughts, or desires don't exist. The individual is aware that the feeling, thought, or desire exists and is trying to remove focus from it. The individual decides not to think about it or act on it. So the problem with this is that after days and months and years of suppressing your feelings and thoughts, it comes to the point that you don't really know yourself anymore. You've essentially put blinders up. If you look into the FLDS, you'll learn that they have a phrase called keeping sweet, which basically means wearing a smile on your face and staying meek no matter the circumstances. I remember hearing sermons on Sunday about if you're not happy, then what is wrong with you spiritually? Something's wrong with you because a Christian should be happy. I could never really allow myself to feel how I really felt. I could never allow myself to show how I felt. And I know that a lot of girls and guys were in the same situation. There is an absolute hang-up on authority to the point where it's not even scriptural. It's insane. So they will quote and requote and unquote and constantly quote the part about wives submit to your husbands, children submit to your parents, and they'll never talk about the verse that says submit one to another. And it's referring specifically to Christian people, saying to defer to one another. The hyper focus on authority causes people to turn a blind eye to when their authorities are actually really messing up. Because, he's the pastor, you can't question him, he's the man of God, he's Elijah, he knows what he's doing. Meanwhile, there's some dark secret that's being hidden and nobody wants to talk about it or bring it forward. I know that one of you on Reddit asked me, why is it that the famous Fundy families tend to stay intact and nobody really ends up leaving? The answer to that question is that they have a completely different experience than Fundy families who aren't famous or who don't have a lot of money or who really just don't have a lot of influence. The powerlessness that comes with being a basic Fundy, if you will, is just crippling. You can't bring it before the deacons because they'll just use it as an opportunity to rat you out to the pastor who will call you out from the pulpit, or someone will bring it to the ministry leader who will put you on blast. You're just going to stay silent about anything that happens to you from the top. I'm really over all these fundamentalist organizations, and I'm also looking at Josh Harris, who started the whole movement about I kissed dating goodbye, and tons of families were all about nobody should date, nobody should get to know their partner one-on-one. It was this huge movement that started, And what happens? Josh Harris denounces his book. He is getting divorced. Doug Phillips, who starts Vision Forum, who ends up cheating on his wife, molesting his children's nanny. Bill Gothard, who starts the Institute of Basic Life Principles, touching girls. And it's absolutely preposterous. And that is why I am so passionate now about speaking up about it. And I don't care what anyone has to say. People are going to call me disgruntled. People are going to call me rebellious. People are going to call me bitter. I really don't care. My experience is my experience. I can deal with that on my own. I would never have come forth to even say anything, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart. I would never have come forth to say anything to put people who I love and care for and cherish. Still, to this day, I care about the people that were in my church. You know, I love them unconditionally, and that's something that will never change because I was in that church for 6 years. I would never be putting these people on blast if I didn't feel to the core of my being that fundamentalism is destroying people, it's hurting people, it's causing kids to grow up with mental problems and with just deep emotional issues, having a hard time even integrating into society as competent human beings. It's really tough to see. I am a teacher. I have been teaching for years. I got my bachelor's degree in music with a minor in education. And I've had kids come to my lessons and just cry. These are kids that had gone to the church. That's hard to see. And I think that fundamentalism needs to end. It's unhealthy, it's not scriptural, it's not ethical. So I'm making this video just to basically kind of get everything off my chest and to talk about why I left the Fundamental Baptist Church, never to return. Has nothing to do with I hate God. It has nothing to do with I hate scripture. It has everything to do with the fact that fundamentalism is inherently wrong. It just is. And if you are somebody who is coming out of that and you are still wrestling and grappling with a lot of the stuff that you grew up with, I just want to let you know that it's okay to talk about it. You know, a lot of people won't understand and they'll be like, well, was it the LDS? Was it this? Was it like, what is it? You know, and you don't need to explain everything. If it's too tough for you to explain it all, you don't need to explain everything. But you are free to share your story, you know, and you're free to be upset and hurt and saddened by some of the things that happened to you. That's okay, you know. I'm just going to leave this video here because I think I've said everything I need to say, and my makeup is going to start running. So anyway, I really appreciate you all watching this. Thank you for just letting me get this off my chest. I'll be trying to make more videos in the future. Just let me know if there's anything in specific that you'd like to know about. I kind of would like to do a Q&A. So yeah, thank you everyone. Bye.